which would require taxpayers with more than $2 million in income to pay a minimum of 30% in federal taxes. They'll also take a procedural vote on a bill to roll back tax breaks for the 5 biggest oil companies. Also waiting Senate action may be a transportation bill that the House is considering this afternoon. Now live coverage of the Senate.
The Senate will come to order. The chaplain, Dr. Barry Black, will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our dwelling place in all generations, help us to run when we can, to walk when we ought, and to wait when we must. Give our lawmakers this day the wisdom to follow your guidance. Illuminate them with your divine light, providing them with a discernment greater than their own. Sustain them by the radiant vision of the ultimate triumph of your truth. May they sense your presence and make this day one of constant inner conversation with you. Lord, give them a productive day as they cast their burdens on you. We pray in your merciful name. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., March 29, 2012. To the Senate, under the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Tom Udall, a senator from the state of New Mexico, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Daniel K. Inouye, President pro tempore.
Mr. President.
The majority leader is recognized.
Following leader remarks, we'll resume consideration of the motion to proceed S-2230, the Paying a Fair Share Act, with the time until 11:30 equally divided and controlled between 2 leaders or the designees. The majority will control the first 30 minutes, Republicans the final 30 minutes. Filing deadline for second-degree amendments to S-2204 is 10:30 a.m. this morning. At 11:30, there will be a cloture vote on the Repeal Big Oil Tax Subsidies Act. The transportation bill expires at the end of this month, so that will have to be addressed before we leave this week. We're waiting to see what the House is doing. As I think a lot of people know, they've tried, the Republican leadership there has tried to bring up a bill on 2 separate occasions. They had to bring it down because they didn't have the votes to pass what they wanted. So I assume that we'll have either something will pass over there, I guess. We've been waiting all week. I'm confident that they can scrounge up 218 votes. Mr. President, over the past decade, 5 major oil companies have made more than $1 trillion. That's not billions. It's trillions. They've also taken home billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies. Our money they've also taken to add to those grossly exaggerated profits. They get these subsidies they don't need. But you don't need to take my word for it, Mr. President. Even oil executives admit an industry making hundreds of billions of dollars in profits every year doesn't need a handout from the American taxpayer. Former Shell CEO John Hofmeister said, "A decade of high gas prices are an incentive enough for oil companies to drill for more oil." Quote, "My point of view is that with high oil prices, such subsidies are totally unnecessary." Close quote. We agree, Mr. President. So do almost 80% of the American people. There is no reason for these companies, 5 companies, last year made $137 billion. They don't need subsidies from the American taxpayer. So today, Senate Republicans are going to have a chance, another opportunity to show Americans where they stand on this issue. I hope that they will allow us to invoke cloture on this and complete this legislation today. They appear poised, however, what I've heard from my friends on the other side of the aisle, to pick the pockets of American taxpayers in order to line the pockets of these oil executives. But unless we vote to repeal these wasteful giveaways, the country will spend another $25 billion over the next decade to making these rich oil companies that much richer. The oil executives who benefit from this bad policy and the Republicans who go to bat for them want you to believe that repealing taxpayer subsidies will increase gas prices. It's not true. The only effective way to bring down prices at the pump is to reduce our reliance on foreign oil. And we've made progress toward that during the Obama years. Almost the 4 years that he's been in office, domestic oil production has increased every year. And America's dependence on foreign oil has decreased every year. Now, everyone should hear what I said again. During the Obama years, domestic oil production has increased. Dependence on foreign oil has decreased. Last year, America used a lower percentage of foreign oil than any time in almost 2 decades, thanks to President Obama's smart energy policies. We've heard speeches the last couple of days coming here, in effect saying, drill, baby, drill. Mr. President, we're doing a good job. We cannot produce our way out of this mess we're in. America controls less than 2% of the oil in the world. We use more than 20% of it. And even though we're doing better, and that's good, we must lessen our dependence. We must become energy independent. And we can do that. The huge discoveries of natural gas that the Republicans voted against are using them. Can you imagine that? A bipartisan bill, Menendez-Burr, to use the natural gas. We have more natural gas reserves than any country in the world. So we wanted to start a program here. Why don't we use some of it? And Boone Pickens, by the way, who is not a Democrat, it's his idea, joined by others, to move the big fleets that we have, millions of these 18-wheelers, every day use all this fuel unnecessarily. We could convert these to natural gas, less polluting, easier on the engines, but the Republicans voted against it. I guess the oil companies would rather just use their oil. Prices at the pump continue to rise. That's because Channing, as I said, Mr. President, drill, baby, drill isn't a comprehensive solution to this nation's energy problems, including high gas prices. We know what's going on in the Middle East. We know how it's complicated issues. We need to continue responsible domestic oil exploration, but we can't drill our way to energy independence, as I just said. America must also invest in clean energy technologies that will free us from our addiction to oil over the long term. President Obama was in Nevada last week. Between a place called Railroad Pass and my home in Searchlight is a huge, what we used to call a dry lake. And on that, the city of Boulder City, which now owns that real estate, they have allowed huge construction projects of solar there. You drive by that, Mr. President, it used to be, we would see, when I was a little boy, we'd drive by that dry lake and you look out there, it looked like there was water. It was mirage. Now, Mr. President, it's not a mirage. It looks like a lake because it's all those solar panels, more than 1 million of them there, producing huge amounts of energy, non-polluting. That's the way it should be. We should need lots more of that. So repealing $24 billion in lavish subsidies to oil companies would pay for those clean energy investments with money to spare. With the savings, we can help move forward toward proven technologies like solar, wind, advanced batteries, and even next-generation vehicles. We can give innovators the tools they need to bring the next electric car, advanced solar panel from the drawing board to the boardroom. As most everyone knows, my wife hasn't been well, so I've been going to Nevada as much as I have over the 30 years I've been here. But I'm going out this coming week because she's doing much better. And one of the places I'm going to visit next week is a man by the name of Byron Giorgio has developed a company for electric cars. I'm looking forward to that. They're manufactured there in Nevada. It's programs like this that we need. We need to give innovators the tools they need to bring the next electric car, as we have in Nevada, or advanced solar panel from the drawing board to the boardroom. And we can pay down the deficit with money that's left over. But we can't do any of that if we continue to give taxpayer dollars to the most profitable corporations in the world. Corporations made, as I indicated, a record $137 billion in profits last year. Easy to keep track of because there's only 5 of them, Mr. President, these multinational corporations. This morning, the Republicans consider whether to put oil company coffers ahead of taxpayers' wallets. I hope they consider this fact. The 5 major oil companies raked in last year more than $260 million every minute of every day for 1 year. They didn't take Christmas off. They still made during Christmas $260,000 a minute. Thanksgiving, New Year's, they got the money. More than $260 million a minute. Mr. President, I'm sorry, $260,000 a minute. I got carried away with my zeros. But that's still a huge amount of money. $260,000 in profits every minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It takes a typical family 5 years to earn what those oil companies took home in profits in a single minute last year. American families are struggling, big oil companies are not. Before my Republican colleagues vote to send another taxpayer dollar to big oil, I hope they'll consider that. I hope they'll consider the $260,000 a minute, and I hope they'll make the right decision as we vote at 11:30 today. Mr. President, would you announce the business of the day?
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of the motion to proceed to S-2230, which the clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 339, S-2230, a bill to reduce the deficit by imposing a minimum effective tax rate for high-income taxpayers.
Under the previous order, the time until 11:30 a.m. will be equally divided and controlled between the 2 leaders or their designees, with the majority controlling the first 30 minutes and the Republicans controlling the second 30 minutes.
Senator from New Jersey.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today at a moment when America is in crisis, and that I don't think that we're paying appropriate attention to the problems that befall our society. Still too many people out of work, too many people who can't afford the health care presently, too many people who can't educate their children because they don't have the means, struggling. Millions of homes still on the edge of foreclosure. And here we see a situation that is unacceptable under any stretch of the imagination. I rise today to talk to the American people who are struggling every week to provide the necessities for family life. At the same time, I ask my Republican colleagues why they would insist on continuing tax subsidies, gifts really, to multi-billion-dollar oil companies at the expense of ordinary, hard-working, middle-income families. Right now, these families are forced to come up with $4 a gallon, $60 to $80 typically to fill up the tank every time they have to go to the gas station. That's a huge burden. The big five oil companies have made almost $1 trillion in profits in the last decade. And look how much money these companies made in the last year alone. It was a record $137 billion between the big five oil companies. So look at them. ExxonMobil, they poor guys, they need a subsidy. They only made $41 billion in a single year. And we look down the list, and the last of the five must feel that trying to catch up is pretty tough. They only made $12 billion, Conoco, the last in 1 year, $12 billion. Given how well these companies are doing, why are we giving them billions of dollars in tax breaks? The legislation that we're voting on today presents a better idea. It says that we should end these tax breaks and invest instead in clean energy solutions that can break our dangerous dependence on oil. Investing in renewable energy has helped launch industries that create jobs and clean up our air and provide homemade American power. Clean energy is also our best chance to break through of spiraling gas prices and our reliance on foreign oil. You'd think that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would want to put a stop to the punishing effects of higher and higher gas prices on middle-income working people. Why wouldn't they want to end America's dependence on fossil fuels and eliminate needless tax breaks for oil companies? 2 words, big oil. Big oil is doing all it can to protect their tax breaks. And it was even said by a retired chairman, CEO of Exxon, that it's not necessary. They don't need it, but they're taking it. Big oil is doing all it can to protect their tax breaks, and the Republicans are lining up to help big oil. It's time to tell the truth. Making oil companies pay their fair share in taxes is not going to raise the price of gas, contrary to what they publish. It just means that big oil executives might have to trim their sails a little bit, share in the problems that we have. When I was a soldier a long time ago, we had an excess profits tax for companies that made in a way, unconscionable amounts of money based on the situation that our country was facing. So it's just a matter of sharing some of the responsibility that our country has to keep everybody feeling like they're participating in the American dream, not a nightmare. While millions of Americans are struggling every week to pay their bills, I want everybody to take a look at how much oil companies are paying their executives. Person who runs ExxonMobil, CEO, was paid $29 million last year, $29 million. ConocoPhillips CEO, $18 million. And at Chevron, $16 million income in one single year. And by the way, and that's for money earned for an essential product. When you look at gasoline, it almost compares to having medicines available, because these are crisis mode. When you look at the cost of gasoline and you say, what would it take to educate all the children who can learn? Way less than we see demonstrated on these charts in their balance sheets. Working men and women in this country, on average, make just over $27,000 a year. $27,000 a year. And I don't begrudge high profits. I really don't. I ran a big company. The company that I helped start has 45,000 employees. It's a huge company. It's a company that calculates the employment records every month. This company's called ADP. So I don't mind big profits. The question is, who are you taking them from, and how critical is the product that they're being forced to buy? Right now, people are paying an average of $3.91 for a gallon of gas. What about the people who live in other places? We just, at random, picked a county in Mississippi. The county is called Essequibo County. Now, last year, the entire income for all the people in that county working was just over $16 million. All the people in a single county, $16 million. This poor guy at Chevron, he made $16 million himself. But the others would leave all of those in that county way behind. A single oil company CEO makes more in 1 year than all the people in that county put together. These hardworking people are already contributing to the income of oil executives whenever they fill up their gas tank. Is it fair to ask them to chip in with their tax dollars to pay even more toward these record-setting salaries? Over the last 10 years, CEO pay at Exxon and Chevron has more than tripled. Over the same period, gas prices have nearly tripled. The picture's clear. Working people are struggling to fill up their tanks, while oil executives are struggling to carry their big fat paychecks to the bank. It's almost beyond belief that senators are lining up to protect tax breaks for oil companies. Some senators, I say. Beyond belief. I say to them, hey, mind your responsibilities. You were elected not just by oil company executives or even oil company employees. Let's focus on the hardworking Americans who are paying more and more at the gas pump, the clean energy workers who might lose their jobs, and our men and women in uniform who put their lives on the line to protect oil supplies. The American people know that these subsidies are unnecessary, they're ineffective, and they're immoral, considering the conditions that exist in our society. Continuing to subsidize oil companies only increases our dependence on dirty fuels. It keeps us on a dead-end road to sky-high energy bills, more oil spills, and dangerous pollution levels. So I call on my colleagues, kick big oil off of the welfare rolls and invest in clean energy jobs. Let's end the industry's tax breaks and break our country's addiction to oil and other dirty fuels. Let's invest in clean energy and smart transportation, not windfalls for oil industry executives and lobbyists. Let's make certain that our children and our grandchildren inherit a country that's fiscally sound, morally responsible, and free from its dependence on oil. Let's not worry about the oil companies. They can take care of themselves. Let's stop this drain on our society, this drain on working class citizens. Let's pay attention to the millions of people in America who say, just give us a chance. Give us a chance to make a decent living. Give us a chance to educate our children. Give us a chance to keep our jobs. Give us a chance to maintain our homes. Get us off the possible foreclosure line. That's what we're looking for. That's what the purpose of this legislation is to say to the American people, hey, look in this chamber, Mr. and Mrs. America, look in this chamber and see the people who are supporting big oil profit fattening, who are supporting these profits. And again, I don't mind companies making profits. But when the profits come really almost in blood money, when you think of how much what the effect that gasoline has on family life, it's unfair, it's indecent, it's improper. With that, I yield the floor.
The Republican leader.
Our friends on the other side, the Senate Democrats, have put on a clinic this week on how not to run a serious legislative body. And if they've achieved anything at all, it's to make Americans even more frustrated with Congress, as if that were possible. Faced with skyrocketing gas prices, Senate Democrats turned to a bill that even they admit doesn't lower them. And then to make matters worse, they blocked Republicans from offering anything that might. That was their brilliant plan on how to deal with gas prices. Raise taxes on energy companies when gas is already hovering around $4 a gallon, then block consideration of anything else just to make sure gas prices don't go anywhere but up. Somehow they thought that doing this would set up some kind of political win for them, which frankly I don't understand. I mean, I can't imagine anybody giving them any high fives for not lowering gas prices. But anyway, that was obviously the plan. And it appears to have fallen short, because now they want to move off this issue and on to another political vote, to yet another debate where the goal isn't to make a difference, but rather to make a point, to increase taxes, not lower price at the pump. Well, I don't expect this next vote will have the political punch they expect either, but that's the Democratic plan anyway. And it's getting really quite tedious. Day after day after day, Senate Democrats ask us all to come out here, not so we can make an actual difference in the lives of working Americans and families struggling to fill the gas tank, but so we can watch them stage votes for show. For some reason, they thought they'd put some political points on the board this week if the American people saw them voting for a tax hike that we all knew ahead of time didn't have the votes to pass. That didn't work. If you have any doubt about that, just ask yourself why they were moving to actually get off of it. And now they think they'll score political points by staging another vote on a tax hike we know doesn't have the votes to pass. None of this makes sense to me, but that's how the Democrats have chosen to run this place. And if they want to keep trying to distract the American people from the fact that they don't have any solutions to the problems we face, that's their prerogative. But that's not going to keep Republicans from talking about ours. That's not going to keep us from trying to actually make a difference around here. Surveys show that 2/3 of Americans disapprove of the way the president's handling high gas prices. And we know that high gas prices are having a negative impact on America's daily lives. So we think that the American people are entitled to this debate. They sent us here to do something other than put on a show, and that's why we'll continue to insist on a serious debate. The Majority Leader frequently complains that there just isn't any time to focus on priorities like cybersecurity, postal reform, and the Export-Import Bank, not to mention maybe passing a budget for the first time in 3 years. Yet he seems to find time to hold not one, but 2 political show votes on tax hikes. Well, the way I see it, the American people didn't send us here to score political points. As I said, they sent us here to make a difference. So I'll be voting against this tax hike on American energy manufacturers, and I would urge my colleagues to do the same. And I hope that when the Senate returns in April, Democrats will have heard from their constituents and will focus on jobs and the price at the pump rather than the latest political vote. Now, in another matter, we've been following what's been going on across...
Madam President, if my friend would allow me to, I have a unanimous consent request, and then I'm going to ask for a minute.
I'll be happy to yield to them.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the cloture vote on the S-2204, which is currently set for 11:30, be moved to start at 11:15.
Objection. Is there an objection?
Senators should not be worried about this because we'll keep the vote open until at least noon. So everybody that was scheduling to vote at 11:30 can still do that.
Without objection.
Note the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Okaka. Mr. Alexander.
on across the street this week with great interest. And while we've all got our preferences, none of us knows at this point how the Supreme Court will rule. But one thing we should all be able to agree on is that the President's health care bill is a mess, an absolute mess. The American people clearly don't like it. Polls show that the majority want the law repealed. More than two-thirds of the public, including most Democrats, believe the core of this bill is unconstitutional, and it's loaded, literally loaded, with broken promises. The President said it would lower costs. It's in fact raising costs. Proponents said it would create jobs. Now we know it means fewer jobs. The President said families would save on their premiums. They're in fact going up. He said people would be able to keep the insurance they have and like. They won't. CBO's most likely prediction finds 3 to 5 million Americans will lose their current plan every single year. The President said he would protect Medicare, but instead the law raids Medicare for over $500 billion, cutting billions from hospitals, nursing homes, hospices, and Medicare Advantage. The President promised the American people their taxes wouldn't go up 1 penny. Well, 2 years later, the American people found out their taxes are going up by more than $550 billion. The Joint Committee on Taxation found no fewer than 11 separate taxes and penalties that fall squarely on the middle class. Remember the Class Act. The administration said it would be fiscally stable and reduce the deficit. A couple of months ago, it was determined to be unsustainable and was shut down before it even began. The President told the American people, quote, federal conscience law will remain in place. 2 years later, he turned around and gave his approval to HHS to mandate that religious-affiliated schools, universities, hospitals, and charities would have to violate their religious tenets or pay a hefty fine. Finally, the health care law will increase Medicaid rolls by nearly 25 million people, costing already cash-strapped states another $118 billion, money that many governors, including Kentucky's, don't know where to get. This law is bad for Kentucky, it's bad for the country, it's bad for health care. Americans don't want it, and regardless of what the court decides this summer, it should be repealed and it should be replaced. It should be replaced with common-sense reforms that lower costs and that Americans actually want. Reforms that protect jobs and state budgets, reduce the deficit, reform entitlements, and strengthen Medicare. One broken promise is one too many. This law is full of them, full of broken promises from top to bottom. 2 years ago, then, Speaker Pelosi said we'd have to pass this bill to find out what was in it. Well, now we know. The American people have had a chance to decide for themselves. They don't like it. They want it repealed. And that's what we plan to do. Now, Madam President, on another matter, I rise once again to share with my colleagues stories of the heartbreaking events in my home state in the aftermath of the horrific wave of storms and tornadoes that ravaged my state, along with several others in the Midwest earlier this month. As I've already stated on the floor, these were very, very severe tornadoes, with at least 11 funnel clouds confirmed by the National Weather Service to have touched down in my state, blowing at wind speeds up to 125 miles an hour. We know that 24 Kentuckians lost their lives and more than 300 were injured. Many homes, churches, schools, and places of business were destroyed. Scenes of destruction still exist across the state in places like Magoffin County, Menifee County, Kenton, Morgan, Lawrence, Laurel, Martin, Pulaski, Johnson, and Trimble, all of those counties in my state which were among the hardest hit. Kentuckians are working hard to rebuild, and I'm pleased to say that despite the tragedy of lives lost, families grieving, and memories destroyed forever, there is some good news to report. And that is how inspiring it is to see so many good-hearted Kentuckians come together to provide for their neighbors in the wake of these tornadoes. Take, for example, the congregation of Arthur Ridge Baptist Church in the town of East Bernstead, located in Laurel County. Thanks to the leadership of Pastor Steve Smith, Arthur Ridge Baptist Church opened its doors within hours of the storm's end to provide food and shelter for those who needed it. Pastor Smith kept the church doors open for 24 hours a day and served up to 700 meals a day to local residents who had no food, no kitchen, and no home to call their own. According to Pastor Smith, people from all over the area pitched in. Folks from different churches worked to prepare meals, and many residents donated items such as dishes, silverware, toiletries, pillows, and blankets for care packages to distribute to the victims of the storm. Local businesses did their part too. The nearby Little Caesars Pizza in London gave away 120 pizzas in one day soon after the tornadoes. Many other local restaurants donated food as well. Thanks in part to the efforts of Pastor Smith and the congregation of Arthur Ridge Baptist Church, life is just a little bit better for many in East Bernstead. At first, the church had to tend to people's most immediate and simple needs: water, a hot meal, an air mattress to sleep on, says Pastor Smith, who is a Laurel County native and has been the pastor at Arthur Ridge now for 6 years. He says, however, at this point, people are over the shock and awe. Weeks after the tornadoes passed, the church was still open 14 hours a day, distributing 125 to 150 meals a day and running a clothing distribution center. Pastor Smith's latest focus was on finding a place to set up donated washing and drying machines so local storm victims without homes can actually clean their clothes. Over 3,500 people have registered to volunteer in the region, and as of last week, over 25,000 meals had been served to displaced families. This is just one story of how many Kentuckians have joined together to help the least fortunate in my state. Hawk Creek Baptist Church in Laurel County, First Baptist Church of East Bernstead, and Trinity Free Will Baptist Church of Martin County also all opened their doors to provide shelter and relief to displaced Kentuckians and the volunteers working to help them in the days after the disaster struck. Jim Paul, director of the organization called Ken 10 Relief Team, was in East Bernstead the morning after the storms with food supplies. He trucked in a tractor-trailer load of donated food and other items and personally volunteered dozens of hours in at least 3 counties to aid storm victims. In Morgan County, the local Appalachian Regional Healthcare Hospital suffered serious damage. Every second-floor window of the hospital was literally blown out, doors were torn off their hinges, and part of the roof was ripped off. Dozens of people were injured and the patients had to be evacuated to nearby hospitals. Luckily, Marty and Teresa Johnson, owners of a nearby Wendy's restaurant, stepped in to help. They served 450 hot meals to the cleanup crew that came to repair the Morgan County ARH hospital and also traveled to Salyerville and gave away food there. One television station in Hazard, WYMT, held a telethon to raise money for victims across the state. I was pleased to play a small part in that effort myself, as the television station asked me to record a greeting describing the devastating effects of the tornadoes. The people of the region raised over $180,000 in the telethon for disaster relief. The local J.C. Penney in Corbin donated clothing and shoes to area elementary school students, and the employees of the store took up a collection to donate winter, spring, and summer clothing for the children. Some of the employees don't have a lot to give, but when this came up and they all wanted to know what else we needed, says Tiffany Flint, the Corbin J.C. Penney store manager, we hope it will help the children to look good and to feel good. We just wanted to do this to help them get back on their feet. The men's soccer team from Kentucky's University of the Cumberlands donated some of their time to help the less fortunate. Head soccer coach Brendan Benware, his staff, and nearly 30 student athletes drove to East Bernstead to help clean up debris in the area. Going was just another reminder of how blessed we really are, said Coach Benware. I think we're all deeply affected by what we saw and reminded how important it is to serve and help our neighbors in time of need. While there, the University of the Cumberland soccer team may have run into the soccer team from Union College, which also traveled to Laurel County to help. The team stacked wood from downed trees, cleared debris from backyards, and helped a man move a displaced steel roof that the tornado had deposited in his yard. Union College Dean of Students, Debbie Deanna, was responsible for sponsoring the trip, while the school's campus food service donated snacks and bottled water. And James Jimerson of the school's physical plant loaned out tools. Local businesses such as Knox Hardware and Pope's Lumber donated work and cleaning supplies, and many faculty, staff, and students of Union College donated items such as food, clothing, and other essentials. In Salyersville, a town in Magoffin County, the block known as Restaurant Row was hit by a tornado and nearly every restaurant on it destroyed. One of the few left was the Dairy Queen, owned by Doug and Sue Mortimer. On the night of the storms, they opened their restaurant running on generator power and served free meals to the volunteers working to clean up the wreckage. Several Home Depot stores in Kentucky and Indiana contributed to the relief efforts as well. In the West Liberty area, District Manager Becky Young and Store Manager Jim Householder coordinated donations of approximately $2,600, and Jim's store employees were out immediately after the storm handing out paper towels, trash bags, and gloves to relief volunteers. Other Home Depot stores in Kentucky and Indiana, led by District Manager Tim Choate and District Human Resource Manager Leanne Bruce, donated thousands of dollars worth of products such as chainsaws, gloves, respirators, tarps, water, and trash bags to organizations such as the Henryville Fire Department and the local United Way chapters. And store employees volunteered to assist those organizations in the recovery. Lowe's stores in Kentucky have also pitched in, providing gloves, tarps, shovels, bleach, and other supplies to communities all across the state. In addition to over $300,000 donated by the company to relief efforts after the storm, the Lowe's District Manager for Kentucky, Stephen West, dispatched Lowe's Heroes store employees who are volunteering their time and their construction know-how. Local Walmart stores in Kentucky, as well as the company's foundation, have provided tens of thousands of dollars worth of water, cleaning supplies, baby food, diapers, and more to help the community. Bob Gound, the Human Resources Manager for Walmart locations in eastern Kentucky, has taken the lead in coordinating these efforts. And local store employees are making bag lunches and handing them out to the hardest hit Kentucky communities. So, Madam President, I've seen firsthand in my recent visits to the Bluegrass State both how severe the destruction is and how hard the people of Kentucky are working to rebuild and lift their neighbors out of these dire circumstances that the cruel forces of nature have put so many of them in. It is thanks to the altruistic and generous Kentuckians like Pastor Steve Smith, among others, that I'm confident that the Kentuckians hurt by these storms are going to recover. I and my staff throughout the state have heard so many heartwarming stories, like the few that I've just shared, that it would be not possible for me to recite all of them on the floor here today. But I hope that the few stories I've shared are more than enough to reassure my colleagues, the people of Kentucky, and the world that we Kentuckians are stout of heart and firm in our resolve. We will prevail over this tragedy. We will rebuild towns like East Bernstadt to be better than they were before. And the families of Kentucky will hopefully one day heal the wounds in their hearts and continue on. And Madam President, I know I have inconvenienced the senator from Georgia, but I have one more rather brief comment. I'd like to say a few words about Laura Dove, who's leaving us this week, sitting right here at the table on the Republican side of the chamber in the well. Now, for C-SPAN watchers, C-SPAN 2 watchers out there, Laura is the Assistant Secretary for the minority. We wish she were the Assistant Secretary for the majority, but she is the Assistant Secretary for the minority, which means she's one of the people who makes this place run every day but whose name you don't hear on the roll call. She's put in her time, starting out as a page in high school and later moving to the Republican cloakroom. She did a stint at the Senate Republican Conference and the National Republican Senatorial Committee. And then Dave Schiappa, the Secretary of the Minority, hired her back into his shop about 10 years ago, and she's done a fabulous job. Senate work is in Laura's DNA. Her dad is a past Senate parliamentarian, and she's been an invaluable member of the floor team for as long as I can remember, counseling members on the floor, working with committees to clear legislation, and doing countless other essential things, big and small, that nobody watching from home would even notice. She's always got a smile, always handles the pressure down in the well with a cool head, and I know she's been an anchor for Dave over the years. So we'll miss having her around. And we wish her all the best as she moves on to other things. I know she wants to travel with her husband Dan and her 2 children, Jakey and Abby. I don't think any of us would be surprised if Laura came back someday. But for now, I want to thank her for her service to the Senate. And Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President,
Senator from Georgia.
I would just note it's never an inconvenience to be deterred by a beautiful lady, and I contend take all the